Hey everybody, it's Sino. A few quick notes before the video. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like, and consider subscribing for daily uploads of scary stories from Reddit. I'm including a link to my playlist featuring videos sorted by popularity in the video description below. And finally, this Sunday, June 4th, I'll be hosting a live stream on my wrestling channel for WWE Extreme Rules, where I'll be doing live commentary and coverage. If you're interested in joining me and checking out the channel, I'll include a link in the video description below. Again, thank you for all the support, and may your wildest nightmares come true. When I was about 17 or so, I had moved back home to the beach after staying out in Washington for a bit after earning my GED. Not long after I got back, I made some new friends, with one in particular, Chris. This story isn't about him, but how meeting him was probably the worst thing that could have happened. Now, we used to hang out all the time and smoke weed, drive around aimlessly, go out to bars, etc. Just your everyday teenager stuff. We were, however, pretty into urban exploration, I guess you could say. We used to go into the woods all the time, in random places, just to explore. We live in a big city, so there isn't much adventure in the concrete jungle. Anyway, one night we're driving along this huge stretch of road, one city over. Chris, a female friend, B, and myself. It's probably about 7:30 p.m. in the middle of summer. There are usually street lamps in most parts of the city, but it was pitch black, with thick woods on either side of the street. The sun hadn't set yet, but you couldn't see anything below the tree line. Chris decides to tell us about this path in the woods that connects to neighborhoods he used to use as a kid, and how it's a cool spot to smoke up, with rope swings and benches and stuff. So, of course, we're like, yeah, let's go. We make our way into the woods, down the only path we can see, and it's well beaten, a clear sign it's used often. I never worried about weird things happening because, you know, they always happen to someone else. As we got to the bench in the middle of the path, we sat down and rolled up. B was making a spectacle of playing on the rope swing that hung over a ditch that was about 6 feet or so deep. So we finished rolling up and have 2 really nice blunts. We're just sitting there bullshitting, having a good time. And out of nowhere, the air seemed to get really thick. It's hard to explain, but my throat started getting tight. It was harder to breathe. I started getting lightheaded for seemingly no reason at all. It took me a minute to realize what I was feeling was dread. Just sheer terror. And I didn't know why. Before I could even ask my friends if they felt it, we heard footsteps. And no sooner did we take notice that 3 men were standing within 5 feet of our circle. Now it's pitch black. We have no lights, just the cherry of our lit smoke. These men look like nothing but shadows in the dark. We can't see their faces, clothes, anything. It was extremely unnerving to say the least. After what felt like forever, one of them spoke to us. "Hey, what are you guys doing out here so late?" "Oh, we're just cutting through and stopped to smoke up," I answered them. "Mind if we join you?" Now, obviously, it would have been better to tell these guys to fuck off, but I didn't want to set anyone off, so I told them yes. One of them sits next to us on the bench and just starts small talk, asking things like, "What do you guys do for work? Where are you from?" etc. It wasn't polite small talk. It was like he was trying to keep us distracted, which I didn't notice at the time. He kept talking as he gave one of our blunts to his friend, who, I'll remind you, haven't said a word and didn't sit either. The other 2 just stood next to the bench, looking like they were waiting for something. I passed the other blunt to our new friend, just hoping they are trying to get a free smoke out. I couldn't have been more wrong. No sooner than the 3 men have both of our smokes do they all get really stiff, like statuesque, and reach into their pockets and, you guessed it, All three of them were armed. Now I'm standing there, thinking that they just wanted our weed and didn't want to argue about it. Then came the very stereotypical, "Now, give me everything you have." As guns were drawn and literally put within an inch of my face, I could almost look straight down the barrel. Damn the darkness. I was so close to it. I just stood there. I didn't move at all. I guess I was kind of in shock, like I really didn't believe what was happening. Then, out of nowhere, the man to my left let a round off right next to my ear. If you think a gunshot is loud when you hear it on your street, you have no idea how loud it is when it goes off right next to your head. I jumped about 10 feet and rushed to empty my pockets. I gave them my phone and my wallet without hesitation. My friends followed suit, and I thought that was the end of it. We weren't so lucky. This did nothing but make them even madder. They were pissed they only got 2 cell phones and maybe $40 from 3 people. Since our car was still parked out on the street, they assumed we must have had more valuables inside. One of the men grabbed Chris by the collar of his shirt and told him that he was going to walk them to the car and let them take what they needed. B and I, of course, protested and were met with more guns in our faces. 2 of the men took Chris out to the car while the third looked at us and said, "Now, I'm going to walk halfway up the path and find me a nice bush to lay low. If either of you try to run or do anything smart, I'll be waiting with a bullet." And he walked down the path after Chris and the other men. B and I stood there in the middle of the woods in complete silence for a good long while. We talked about how good our chances were if we tried to make a run for it and ultimately decided against it. We weren't sure if the guy was bluffing or if he really was waiting in a bush to shoot us. It felt like we were there forever, and out of nowhere, 3 more gunshots ring out from the street. B lost it. She just started bawling right there in the woods, sobbing at the thought of Chris being murdered. I tried my best to console her and almost strangled her at the same time. When I leaned in to hug her, I could see the light from her phone in her back pocket that she refused to give up. We used it to call 911, but never put the phone to our ear. We just called and put it back in her pocket while talking about the situation. We were scared the guy in the path would see the light if we kept it out too long. We waited there in the woods for an eternity before we started seeing flashlights and hearing the barking of dogs. It was the police. I couldn't have been more relieved, and neither could B. She started sobbing all over again, and we walked out of the woods with the cops. They took B to the side while they zip-tied me and put me in the back of a police cruiser. I started staring out the window, wondering why and where they took B, before I noticed Chris was sitting next to me. I started crying myself, out of relief that he was alive and wondering what happened when they got to the street. He told me that they brought him to the car and had him let them in. He said he let them take whatever they wanted, which still wasn't much in terms of sellable. He said they got pissed and hit him, then shot off a few rounds before running into the woods on the opposite side of the street. I asked him if he told the cops that, and he said they wouldn't listen. It didn't take me long to find out why. They pulled me out of the car after talking to B, and I insisted they remove the zip ties if I wasn't being arrested. Why should I? Apparently, the police thought the B was in danger of us. Granted, I realize now they were only being diligent, but at the time, I was not only offended, but pissed off. They thought that Chris and I were back there trying to rape B or something just as heinous. It was pretty shocking that they straight up accused us of sexually assaulting her in the woods and refused to listen about the men. That is, until B calmed down enough to tell them the same thing we did. Eventually, they believed us, but it was too late, since it had been almost an hour since the men took off into the woods. They told B that she could drive her car home, but because Chris and I were adults, they wouldn't allow her to give us a ride back. So I asked the cop if he would take us back home, and he declined, and not politely either. It was pretty clear they thought we weren't being 100% truthful about not messing with B in the woods. The cops left us there, standing in the middle of the road in pitch black darkness, woods on either side, after being robbed at gunpoint and the man probably still close by. I have never been that terrified in my entire life. We started walking down the street. I think we must have walked for a good 5 miles. The entire time glancing over our shoulders, scanning the tree line. Every time we heard any sort of noise, we jumped and just stood still. Eventually, we came to a main road and could see a shopping center not far off. These were usually patrolled by security at night, so we thought it was our best bet. We get up to one of the main stores, a Dollar General, and scan the lot for any type of security, and there was nothing. Not one car in the entire lot. Now these were back in the days of payphones, and luckily, there was one right outside. I got on my knees to scan the underside of a soda machine, and found just enough to make one call. We called Chris's brother, and thank God, he was awake and agreed to come get us. I don't think I had ever been so relieved to get into a car in my life. He got us home safely, and all I could think about was if I would be deaf in my left ear forever while trying to stop shaking. I lost my first cell phone I ever had, a new lost wallet, and almost my hearing. But I'm extremely glad I'm still alive despite everything. Creepy men in the woods, stalking teens and robbing them. Let's never meet again.